It all began on July 21st, a date etched into my memory, the first day of what was supposed to be an unforgettable holiday. The sun blazed down from a clear sky, and the salty tang of the sea filled the air. I was standing on the deck of a large ferry at Mangalore Harbor, watching the coast fade into the distance as we sailed out into the open sea. My parents were chatting excitedly, already in vacation mode, while my younger brother Samir ran around the deck trying to capture the attention of seagulls circling overhead. It was just past 11 in the morning, the heat of the day still bearable under the gentle sea breeze. The ferry was bustling with families, groups of friends, and couples all heading to Goa, just like us. I was excited too, but there was something different about this trip. Something in the air, perhaps, that made me feel like something unexpected was about to happen. As I leaned against the railing, I began to notice the people around me. Some were taking pictures, others chatting loudly and pointing out the seagulls. Children were laughing, their parents trying to keep up with them, and there was a general hum of excitement. That's when I first saw him. He stood out immediately. A tall, quiet boy in a white t-shirt with blue stripes, leaning against the side of the boat, lost in thought. He didn't seem to notice the noise around him or the bustling energy of the ferry. My eyes lingered on him. He had an air of calm about him, a quiet presence that contrasted sharply with his friends who were laughing and joking around. One of them, who looked strikingly similar to him, must have been his brother. They had the same sharp features, the same deep-set blue eyes, and the same relaxed smile. His brother and another boy were trying to grab the attention of the seagulls, laughing as they tossed crumbs into the air, but he remained still, only smiling faintly at their antics. Suddenly, as if sensing my gaze, he looked my way. Our eyes met for a brief, electrifying moment, and my heart skipped a beat. He didn't look away immediately, and instead, his lips curved into the faintest smile, gentle and shy. For a moment, everything else seemed to blur around me. The laughter of his friends, the squawking of the birds, even the sounds of the sea, it all faded away. It was just him and me, connected in that fleeting exchange. I tried to stay composed, but inside, my thoughts were racing. Who was he? Why did that one glance feel so significant? As I stood there, lost in thought, the boat slowly began to move, cutting through the water as we left the harbor behind. We were headed south, toward Goa, and it would be a long journey, 24 hours on the sea. I couldn't help but wonder what this time would bring. A full day and night together on the same boat, with that boy whose quiet smile had already left such a deep impression on me. The ferry was more than just a means of transportation. It was almost like a floating city. There were small cafes, shops, and even a cinema. In the evening, Samir and I decided to explore, eventually finding ourselves at a small dance hall. The room was dimly lit, and the music echoed softly as a few couples swayed to the rhythm on the dance floor. We grabbed a couple of sodas and sat at a table near the edge, watching the scene unfold. As the evening wore on, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The boy with the blue-striped t-shirt. I wondered where he was, if he was enjoying the journey as much as I was. But there was no sign of him, and I began to feel a pang of disappointment. Then, just as I was about to give up hope, he appeared. Or at least, I thought it was him. A tall boy, now in a black t-shirt, walked into the dance hall with one of his friends. He stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room. My heart raced as his eyes finally met mine, and a slow, warm smile spread across his face. It was the same smile that had captivated me earlier. Without thinking, I smiled back. To my astonishment, he made his way toward me. Time seemed to slow as he walked across the room, and before I knew it, he was standing at our table. He didn't say much, just a simple, "Would you like to dance?" But those few words were enough to send my heart soaring. I stood up, feeling a rush of excitement as we moved onto the dance floor. The music surrounded us, and for a while, we were in our own little world, swaying to the rhythm. He wasn't shy anymore. He moved with confidence, and I felt myself being drawn into his easy charm. For a few minutes, everything felt perfect. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone standing by the entrance. A second tall boy, this one in a white t-shirt with blue stripes, the same boy I had seen earlier on the deck. I froze. It was him, the real him. And in that moment, I realized my mistake. The boy I was dancing with wasn't him. It was his brother. My heart sank. The real boy, the one who had captivated me with his quiet smile and shy demeanor, was standing by the door, watching us with a look of sadness in his eyes. He stood there for just a moment, our eyes meeting once again, but this time there was no smile. He turned and quickly left the room, disappearing into the shadows of the ferry. I stopped dancing, pulling away from his brother and returning to my seat. My chest felt heavy, and I wanted nothing more than to run after him, to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. But the words wouldn't come. I sat down, my mind racing, as his brother continued to dance, now with Samir, who seemed completely oblivious to the emotional storm brewing inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my cabin, listening to the gentle creaking of the ferry and the distant sounds of the sea. But my thoughts were consumed by him, the boy who had quietly slipped away. I replayed the moment over and over in my mind, wondering if I'd ever get the chance to see him again, to apologize, to ask his name. The next morning, I woke up early and rushed to the cafe, hoping he might be there. Samir came with me, but I barely noticed him as I scanned the room for any sign of the boy. I ordered coffee after coffee, though I didn't even like it, just to give myself a reason to stay. But he never came. As the hours passed, my heart sank, By 11 o'clock, we had docked in Goa, and the passengers began to disembark. I stood at the railing, watching the bustling crowd, hoping for just one glimpse of him. But he was nowhere to be found. As I stepped off the ferry, I couldn't shake the feeling of unfinished business, of a story that had barely begun but would never reach its end.